All right. Well, it looks like you have a very intimate group today.
Okay, well, that's great. Yes, that's great. So as long as we do, let me go ahead and start right in. How many of y'all are familiar with FourSight at all, or you're a little bit familiar with
A
it?
little bit.
Did you have your, so you weren't there for the time they did the thing at the conference. I think
I
that was,
did it at the
oh,
conference.
you did. Okay,
Yeah.
great, great. And Christine is here.
I'll
Um,
remember when you go through the different types, I'll remember which one I was.
okay, that's good. That's good. And how many of you all are familiar with creative problem solving? Okay. All right. So this is not surprising at all, at all. And if we hadn't done this at the creativity conference, I wouldn't be either. But I have found it life-changing, and I hope you will too. So once again, thank you so much for having me here to talk about the FourSight framework for creative problem solving, and it will take you and your clients from good to great. It has that potential. I am the principal of Line Communications, and I have been working in this field of communications, PR, and marketing for the last 20 years. Over the course of my career, I have worked with government, I have worked with for-profit, I have worked with social profit, which is Lynn Twist's name for nonprofit. She says nonprofit is totally incorrect, and social profit is a much better name for the nonprofit sector. And the minute I heard that, I quit using the term nonprofit. So I do social profit communications too. I've worked as a publicist. That's how I started out. I moved into being a full service agency with a colleague, and I am currently working as a consultant. During my career, I have had the opportunity to work with some very innovative thinkers and in very innovative areas. In the social profit sector alone, community leaders, I've had the privilege of working with leaders seeking truly innovative solutions to very complex social issues. Our agency that I started with a colleague was the first agency to do PR for the environmental sector. And so we had lots of learning curves there. And I do continue working a lot in the environmental sector today. All of this paved the way for me to be interested in FourSight. When you study communications, when you are trained in communications, you learn formulas for thinking through a situation and helping your client think through a situation. And then you study how these different formulas are applied in various situations, from strategic planning to branding to crisis communications. There is a formula that you follow, and specifically in how to think. So what FourSight does is, when I was introduced to this at the same year that Leslie's referring to at the Florida Creativity Conference, it immediately caught my attention, because here's a formula that helps you think through a situation creatively with the express purpose of out-of-the-box thinking and creative and innovative solutions. So that is what we're here to talk about, and why this is such a game changer. So I'm going to start our presentation, and everybody can see the presentation now? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, and we are going to move. Why are we not moving? Okay, there we are. So there is a spoiler alert. The science is in, and you and I were all born creative. And if you were one of those people that tells people, I was not born creative, I hope by the end of today, you will no longer say this. The science is not on your side with that. What you will know also by the end of this, you will know the formula for the creative process. You will have an idea about what kind of creative thinker you are, and you'll know a couple of ways that you'll be able to use this to help your clients. We're going to start with a quiz. If you'll grab something that you can write with and and jot this down. This is just putting our big toe in the water. We're using the art and science of deduction. And this is the beginning of figuring out what kind of creative thinker you may be. You're just going to write down A, B, C, or D. I am most motivated by A, a need for a clear understanding of the facts. B, a great idea. C, an opportunity to perfect an existing solution. Or D, a job to do. Everybody's got something to write with. Are we good? Move on. Okay. Number 2, I learn best through A, facts, research, and data. B, stories, ideas, and concepts. C, evaluating options. And D, trying things out. How do you learn best? We're good? 3, I like to spend time A, working with information. B, thinking about new possibilities. C, making things just right. And D, testing, prototyping, and doing. So what you're going to do now is just note, do you have more A's? Do you have more B's? Do you have more C's? Or do you have more D's? So, and you're just going to set that aside for the moment. And we will come back to that. So Google knows I like creativity. And so I am often sent articles and posts that look like this: 6 ways to become a more creative entrepreneur, 6 surprising ways to become a more creative person, 25 ways to be more creative. And so these articles are telling us that our culture values ideas, and that if we want to be creative people, we need to be able to think of ideas. And it's true, but it's a fraction of the story. How many of y'all have found value in these kinds of things? Okay. If you didn't find value in them, there's a reason, and you'll find out. In the creative process, there are 4 stages, and there are 4 distinct types of thinking in this process. Clarify the challenge, generate ideas, develop solutions, and implement action. When you are clarifying the challenge, you are gathering the information to identify what the problem or goal is, the primary, most important. When you're generating ideas, you are thinking of ideas that will solve the problem, possible ideas to solve that problem that's been identified. When you're developing solutions, you're taking the best idea and you are making it work. You're running it out, you're building a system to make it work. When you're implementing action, you are doing just that. You are taking all that planning and research and you are putting it into action, and you will further refine it as you take action. So here's the thing to know about that is you're already doing this. You have been doing this since the day you were born. You're wired to do it. It is in your DNA. So when we're talking about the creative process or the creative problem solving process, we're talking about how to deliberately and intentionally apply what you're already doing to get these results. Just like if you are used to doing breathing exercises to relax or to energize yourself or to go to sleep better, you're using breath intentionally. Yoga teaches how to use breath intentionally, and we get very, very different results than we're unconsciously breathing in and out. And this is what this study is all about. Each of these stages answers a very specific question. When you clarify, you're answering what is the right thing to do. When you're generating ideas, what might be all the ways we could do it? When you're developing solutions, does our solution work? How might we make it better? When you're implementing, it's just, let's do it. What studies show that when we use this process intentionally, we are coming up with better ideas and better solutions. So what does it look like when we apply it? When do we use that? I like to think about cooking when I'm trying to think of examples for this, because it's amazing, because we cook we do it every day. So when you take the peanut butter sandwich, this is not a case where you really need to think too carefully about it. You've done it a gazillion times. You know what the ingredients are. You know how to do it. So you don't really need to intentionally apply the creative problem-solving process. But if you wanted to win the Great British Bake Off and you were assigned to make an award-winning peanut butter sandwich, it's a whole different scale of thinking that you're going to need to do. You're going to need to ask yourself what's done before, and you're going to research how this all the ways peanut butter sandwiches might have been done. This is one way we could approach it. We're going to then think of ideas. How might we create a novel peanut butter and jelly sandwich? We're going to develop it by working up a recipe that is special for this contest. And if you've ever watched this show, you have a week to work on that. And then we're going to just do it. We're going to go to that contest on the weekend, and we're going to bake our bread and make our award-winning peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So that's the process. And the FourSight framework is composed of two things: the process and what this man discovered. So Gerard Puccio is the founder of FourSight, and he was a professor in the 1990s. He was a professor of creativity. He had done these workshops in training people in creative problem solving hundreds of times. But on this particular day, at the end of a session, a woman came up to him and she said, "Oh my God, that is fantastic. This was great. I'm so energized. Are we going to do more of this?" And he was like, "Thank you very much." And a couple of minutes later, a gentleman came up and he said, "Oh my God, that was torture. Tell me, we are not going to do any more of this. I'm totally exhausted." So the timing of this and the phrasing of this caught his attention. How is it possible that this exact same material had such a profoundly different effect energetically? This woman's completely energized. This fellow's completely exhausted. What happened? What's going on here? So fast forward to today, and the subject of energy and how we creatively think has been exhaustively studied by scientists. And what they've come up with is each one of us has a preference, a thinking preference for one of the stages of the creative process, the creative problem solving process. And these preferences are what determine our energy in a project. If we happen to be the people who prefer to gather information and identify the problem, we are clarifiers. If we happen to be that person that likes to think of ideas, we're ideators. If we happen to be the person who likes to take that idea and figure out how to make it work, we're developers. And if we are the person who just likes to jump right in and take action, we are implementers. So the implications of the thinking preferences have just gone on and on, but here is the basics of what we know. To solve a problem and get that out of the box thinking that we're looking for, we need all four stages, but our brains play favorites. We don't prefer, most of us do not prefer all kinds of thinking. Most of us do not like all four stages of thinking. Over half of us prefer at least one of these over the others. And so what happens then? If I prefer to clarify, I don't want to do anything else. I want to live in this place that I was born with. I'm wired to do it, and it's really super fun. I love researching. If I like thinking of ideas, I love thinking of ideas. I don't want to do anything else. If I'm developing, I like to live there. If I'm implementing, I want to keep on taking action. And if I'm an implementer, I don't really want to do all that thinking stuff. I just want to jump right in there and start fixing it. We like to live in our areas of preference. So you might have started to come up with an idea. If you had all A's, you're looking at clarify. If you had all B's, you're looking at ideator. If you had mostly C's, you're looking at developer. And if you had mostly D's, you're looking at implementer. So this is just a first take on it. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more. And if you may find this information confirming what you thought, and you may find it changing what you thought, but we'll just jump ahead here. So that was the slide you could have seen. Let's look at what a so let's look at what a clarifier is. So Albert Einstein, who actually has a lot to say on the topic of creativity, was posed a very famous question that you may have heard of. And it was, if the human population was facing imminent demise in 60 minutes, how would you spend your time? And he said, I would spend the first 55 minutes identifying the problem and 5 minutes solving it. This is absolutely a clarifier statement. And it shows you don't have time. What the clarifier assumes is you don't want to be working on the wrong problem. You want to put your energies and resources into the right problem. With imminent demise facing us, especially, we need the exact right problem addressed. And this is what he's saying. You've got to have the right problem, or you're just, you're facing, well, in this case, imminent destruction. But when you're having a project of, again, we're not talking peanut butter sandwiches. When you've got a project like getting people to Mars, the first self-driving car, all these kinds of things that require enormous inputs of human capital and resources and multi-million dollars in funding, yes, you want to be working on the right problem. How do clarifiers do it? They seek to clarify the right problem. They do it by asking questions. They gather information and data and research. They may suffer from analysis paralysis. When you get all that information in, you can find yourself in a quandary about which way to go. For a clarifier, there is no amount of time that is really too much time. There's always some piece of information that can illuminate your question even further. I'm wondering if you all know anybody who might be a clarifier, and a colleague, a family member, and let's talk about that for just a second. Is there, and why? Do you can turn your mics on if you want, or unmute yourselves, or yes. Hey, Leslie.
So I feel like I actually switched from, when I was a sales manager, I was a doer. Tell me what to go sell and I'll go sell it, and don't change your mind because I'm going to be mad because I'm bringing you back what you told me to bring you back the first time.
Yes. Yes.
But now, as a consultant for 20 years, I'm totally a clarifier. Like, okay, they think they know what their problem is, but oftentimes it's not what they think. And so, I make them go through a 2-day process of identifying the problem and getting all the, working them through the first 3 stages, and then we do.
Yes. Well, that's interesting. And you may find that you have more than one preference. You may have a preference for both clarifying and implementation, and the work that you were asked to do would have brought out the one that you need to do. Well, let me ask you, are you energized by both, or were you tired by one of them? Because that's really the defining piece of it.
Yeah, I think energized by both. Yeah.
Okay. What about anybody else?
Sometimes the opportunity, sometimes that stage of, the what ifs feels like I'm being dragged through, purgatory to get to the end. Yeah.
Okay. So you may have a stronger preference for implementation. But they still work for you for energetically. Anybody else? Do you have an idea? Are you familiar with someone in a family or a colleague who might be, or supervisor or whatnot, who might be a clarifier? Okay. I'm going to go back to sharing. Okay, we lost our place there. Let me jump back to that. On the current slide. Okay, so what's an ideator? So isn't Lady Gaga the picture of ideation? And one of the really interesting things is that I came across is that she said, people think I'm in costume, but this is my authentic self. And what this tells us about ideators is that ideas are concrete, tangible things. And ideators can try on ideas the way we try on clothes. And it's just, how does it feel and how does it look? And they can generate, if I don't like this one, there's one after that. If you don't like that idea, I've got another one. If you don't like that one, I've got another one. And they can go very easily and tirelessly. How do they do it? They do it by playing with possibilities. They look at the big picture, stretch their imagination. They may take an intuitive approach. One of the things that ideators may fall short on is details. As a travel agent, if they were an ideator, they might get you really jazzed about places to go. But when it comes to booking the tickets, they might not be so on target with that part. You might not want a travel agent as an ideator. But you often find them, while these These do not tell us about careers. We often find ideators in arenas of interior design and design areas and artsy areas, performance areas. Okay, do you know anybody who's an ideator, a family member, a colleague? And I won't go off of this, but do you want to put it in chat for a second? Not by name, but just a position, if it's a parent or a sibling, a colleague. And Leslie, if you could call that out, whatever's in chat, because I can't really see it.
Well, I just wrote that I'm an ideator.
Oh, and so what do you see as an example of that?
Oh, and all my coaching with my clients, it starts off with what's possible here for us to do today. And my second strong is developing to then see, how do we lay this out in a way that makes it practical and functional? But the implementation part, the actual implementation, if I'm repeating it, bores me.
Okay.
So it's creating in the moment and developing something and getting a flow going. Very, very, very natural for me.
Anyone else?
You can all unmute yourselves if you like, please. We're a small enough group.
Yeah, we're a small enough group. Okay.
Deb
Yeah.
Masborough says most of my clients, lots of ideas, but no path to implementation. And Mona says her brother.
Right.
I'm sorry, Mona, what were you going to say?
I was just saying my brother's a wonderful ideator. He's does the landscapes, but what he did is he refined his idea into working with a Shinboku trees, where he looks at a tree, sees the idea of the energy lines in the trees, and he clips the cording and design, helps the tree to grow into that direction. So he ideates with that tree. And,
very interesting. That's very interesting.
I also ideate with movement. So
do you get energy from ideation?
I do. And
okay.
Implementation in a class, seeing how that idea works out.
Okay. So let's look at developer. Just think of those fast food places and the systems that they have that make that fast food line work, and how that the person that developed that tells you exactly how the developer thinks. Building one step, step two, step three, step four. Ray Kroc, who purchased the McDonald's, there is that amazing movie that shows you exactly how developers think. But Ray Kroc purchased this from McDonald's, purchased a chain, and said perfection is very difficult to achieve, and perfection was what I wanted in McDonald's. The developer is the perfectionist in they're the perfectionist, and that comes with a plus and a minus, of course. The developer does look to turn the best idea into a workable solution, and they do it by analyzing the pros and the cons. They like to build on and improve. In my work with a colleague who's a developer, there is no idea I might have that she cannot improve on. It's very humbling. And then they plan the steps to implement and execute an idea. Again, as perfectionists, they can get stuck and they can just get riveted on one solution and keep trying to make it work, or they can just get stuck, making it perfect, and they just want a little more time. What about y'all? Developers, there's a database of 150,000 FourSight profiles. And of this database, the developer is one of the smaller groups. I'm wondering if any of y'all recognize having a developer as a client or a family member?
Well, I've got a client who's a developer for sure. That is his job. He's in a high-tech area, and he's given something that's a prototype, and his job is to develop it into something that's specifically implementable.
Yes. Well, that would be, he is most likely a developer. And while, once again, these are, all of these thinking preferences are how we think. They are not vocations, but developers naturally naturally gravitate towards a software field or a technical field because they do
Yeah.
have that kind of thinking in
He's an
there.
engineer, so it makes sense.
Right. Engineers are surprisingly in the social profit sector, there's a lot of developers because they are socially engineering new solutions and they like to think through and make it work. And so that's been interesting. So next we have what is an implementer, and Serena Williams is certainly the goddess of action. If I don't get it right, I don't stop until I do. One of the things about implementers is they like to start with action. They don't necessarily want to come to those meetings where you're thinking of all the wonderful things you could do or how to develop it. They want to just get right in there and start. So, this is presented in a linear framework. We start with clarifying, we go to ideating, but, it doesn't really always work like that in the real world. And with the implementer, they may start with action, and then when they need to know something, they'll go back and look at it. They do give structure to ideas. They bring ideas and solutions to fruition. Just do it is their motto. And I like to say that they have the courage to learn. They have the courage to fail. And the thing is, an implementer may not recognize failure as failure. They are like, oh, okay, that didn't work. Now let's try this. Oh, that didn't work. Okay, let's try this. And Edison is often quoted as the example where someone had said, so what does it feel like to be a failure after, the thousandth time that it took him to make a light bulb? And he's like, I didn't fail. I figured out, 1,000 ways that this didn't work. And then it succeeded. And so they have they have courage to fail, where a lot of us are like, oh my gosh, it has to be right the first time out. The downside of implementation is they may leap to action too quickly. They could benefit, especially in complex solutions that cost a lot of money. Half-baked ideas are going to be more expensive than a well thought out idea. And so that can be a downfall to implementation. They get used to solving things on the fly, and sometimes it just doesn't work out.
Suzanne,
So, yes.
Just FYI, Edison was very famous for saying, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember the exact word, but it's invention or creativity is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
That certainly fits him. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. So what about y'all? Deborah, Deb says that she sees an implementer herself. Do y'all see anybody around you who is an implementer? Client? What about a client? Do you have clients who are implementers?
I don't have a client, but I have a couple of colleagues in the mastery program that I'm in who are being coached and learning certain processes or ways of approaching their businesses. And from my perspective, I'm always astounded that they jump into action and start spending money and doing stuff, but they don't have the big picture. And then they wonder why it's not working. But they eventually get it. It's a trial and error in a way.
Yes.
This is a real problem with salespeople. My biggest client is a broker, and we just hired somebody. They have in the Rocky Mountains, his territory, they have 25 lines. So he had all 25 lines send samples to his favorite buyers. How you have no idea what those people want or need, or so you just spent thousands of dollars sending refrigerated cheese and meat samples from all over the country. And now how do you follow up with that?
Right.
It's, so yeah, I see it with salespeople a lot. It's like, let me add it. And they don't have a plan.
Right. Yes. I have a story about my nephew that I'm going to come, you're reminding me of it. I want to come back to that when we get down the way. Yes. So my husband's an implementer on steroids. And that's where you start to talk about something and they're fixing it. He's fixing it. I don't need it fixed. I just, need an ear, but he's fixing it. And that's how they do it. Also, a lot of times things get done because he does it. If it was up to me, it would just take a little bit longer, if not a lot longer. So,
yeah.
So any questions or comments before we carry on?
Question.
Yes, go ahead, Mona.
So
Oh, what happened there?
some of
Mona,
mind body and engagement. Can you hear me?
I just caught on. Would you mind repeating from the
I
beginning?
said I work with movement, and I have a patented method that I work and to teach them how to change their body, their movement pattern that is creating pain in their body. And so you bring up the question of implementation. Some clients, it's really easy for them to take the system, the notion, and the idea, and to implement what I'm asking them to do. But for others, it's not so easy. Do you have any suggestions in terms of implementation? Because obviously, when you're working with somebody to teach them something new and they're learning something, it's a creative experience in terms of how they're processing all of that.
Mm-hmm. I do. And I'm going to hit that a little bit later in just a few slides. And it's just an initial first approach. And so let's see if it helps you out. And otherwise, maybe we can chat about that later and see what we come up with.
Okay.
We're going to try something called 4 corners. And at this point, you have a thought about either you know what you are, like Leslie, or you have a thought about what you most likely are yourself. So what I want you to do is we're going to try to use the annotate button. If you move your cursor up to the top of your screen, and I can't do it because of this setup here, you should see view options. Does everybody see that?
Yeah.
You should have something. Okay. So if you click on view options, you should have a word that says annotate. And if you click on annotate, you should get a toolbar. Everybody good with that?
Yep.
So what I want you to do is I want you to go to text, click on T for text, choose red, and I would like you to type your name in the area that you think is your strongest thinking preference.
On my computer, choosing red is after you click text, you have to click on format.
Yeah, go to format for the color.
Right.
Yeah, my computer doesn't have any of the leads that you suggested.
You don't have the annotate. You don't have the view options at the top. Sometimes it's at the bottom.
No, I don't.
All right. Which one? Tell me which one you think is your strongest preference.
Either 1 or probably 1 or 3 or develop, clarify or develop.
Okay, and so what would you choose as the strongest?
Probably develop.
Can someone put her name there?
It's
And Leslie, can you type her name in there? Christine?
Chris.
In red. Okay, so there's a John Walsh on here. Is he going to put his name in? And there's a Luan Morrow. And we've got Valerie, and we've got Christine, and we've got Mona, and we've got Leslie. Okay, okay. So interesting. There's Luan. Okay. So, let's start with Christine. Christine, tell me how you see yourself as a developer.
Well, I do the details, and then I'd know what to do first. As you said, it's steps. And so I'm kind of between the clarify with knowing what information there is, what needs to be done, and then a way to.
Okay. All right. And you get energy from this. You get energy from doing this.
Sure.
Okay. Okay. Because this is really the key. This is this is a big distinction. We have the capacity to do all of these, but we prefer one of them. And the one that gives us energy, or the two that give us energy, those are our thinking preferences. And these are the things that you can do to start carving out how to work differently, how to plan differently, how to think differently, and how to work differently with clients. there is a key difference between clarifier and develop it, because there is some overlap. Clarifier is looking back to truly understand the situation, to identify the right thing to do, to work on. Develop is looking forward to the solution. So you're using some similar pieces, clarify looking back and develop looking forward to how to implement that solution in the best way. Let's see, we talked to, so Mona, how do you see the implement in yourself? Y'all can unmute. Mona, you need to unmute. Unmute. Leslie, can you unmute everyone? You may have a lot more.
Yeah, I have to go out of annotate to do it here.
Okay. There we go.
Okay.
So how do you see that, Mona?
So I have to say, I thought I was an idea person. I came up with a patent, but I realized the process is how it is that I put all the ideas in my mind and I could see them happening. And then, and I realized when I'm working with a client, and I have so much more fun than I do writing down everything. So, but I just never realized that I was an implementer. And so this is giving me some push to go forward and implement, because I realize now I didn't think I was ready, but now I know I know where my energy is. So I really, this is great. Thank you.
It makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference.
Yes.
And I was working with a client who was just she's just a bit tough. I liked her, but just a bit tough working. And she said to me one day, this is how I do it. I get a vision and I run for it and I don't look back. And I understood everything. Of course, she's an implementer, and it explained everything. And I knew then how to work with this person and how to skip the details and how to it's great. And let's see, we talked a little bit about clarify and we talked a little bit about ideate. So let's do one more of these, if y'all will. I want you to go back to view options, annotate, toolbar, text, and in blue, put your first name under the area that is your least preference, your lowest interest, your lowest preference, the one you really get tires you out. Did y'all follow that? View options, annotate, text, blue.
I have to say, I learned this in the Greater Sarasota Coaches Alliance when we had a board of directors.
Okay.
I learned this early on.
That was good. That's
because we would go to board meetings and people go, we should do this and we should do that and blah, 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 da, 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 da. And I would leave and I would start doing stuff. And people didn't appreciate it or they criticized it or whatever. And I had to wrap my head around the fact that this out of Myers-Briggs, that they were P's, possibilities, and I was a J, doing. So I just had a little chat with myself and I stopped doing everything that everybody wanted done because they didn't really want it done. They just wanted to talk about getting it done.
That's a great observation and useful and probably saved you a lot of
it frustrated me for a while, but I finally got clarity around it.
Well, I'm going to reframe that a little bit because Myers-Briggs is a personality assessment. And usually when organizations are having trouble, everybody's going, oh no, we should do the Myers-Briggs. And it is helpful. And I certainly use that and do, value it. But what is, I think, more likely to be the issue is thinking preferences. When you understand people's thinking preferences, there's a lot more understanding of what that person is going for. There's a lot more understanding of why we might be butting heads. And there's a lot more understanding of how to put this together and how to work with this.
Well, at the time, that was the framework I had to
Yeah, no, of course. We all,
understand it and cut myself a break from being
no,
too
and I'm
frustrated.
sure, no, it's true. We all did. We all use Myers-Briggs, but this is absolutely how we creatively think. And I find it to be a more useful framework for understanding how to come together and be productive. I am curious about Lua.
Luann.
Luann.
I don't know. Both times it just wouldn't take the N.
Okay.
L-U-A-N.
So you're saying that you get drained by implementation. How do you experience that? What's that like for you?
Well, I like the implementation process to a point, but once I get it implemented, I don't want to continue to follow through. So it works well for me because I've been a consultant opening new facilities in assisted living. So I love the vision and the possibilities and the big picture. And I like implementing, and then I want somebody else to take it over. Let me get it up and running and I'm gone.
Okay.
So it was kind of, that's my weak point in a way, is that I don't stick around.
Okay.
And that could be a weakness.
Yes.
Maybe I should stick around.
Well, there's a
question. But I kind of like to go on to the next project.
Yes. But knowing that may shift how you work. Maybe it's time to delegate. Maybe it's time to partner up. Here's the question. If you know where your top energies lie, what is the best for your client? What is the best way you can serve your client? If someone else is doing their top energies in something that you're done with, maybe that serves your client better. We don't always get those choices. Sometimes we have to do it all. But when you have choices like that, and for myself, as when I've been working with others, I assumed that because when I brought people in, I wasn't conscious of this, but it was often to do implementer things, and I did the front end of things, and I assumed that I had more energy because, of course, I'm working with another person, and it's I'm not doing the whole load, and that's a reasonable deduction, but that's not it. It's because now I'm only doing those things where my energy is at the highest, and they're doing those things that their energy is at the highest, and that's a very different working relationship than just, oh, well, there's more of us, so of course I have more energy, which is a little bit part of it. But and it changed my mind about why I might delegate, and specifically how I'm going to delegate. Why would I delegate the things that I'm doing with high energy to someone else? I'll do that, and you do what you do. So it's really helped me be very intentional about that kind of thing. I'm curious if Valerie and Leslie want to add on to what Lua said.
I had a question, not necessarily about what Luann said, but although I would say that she and I are pretty similar in terms of wanting to flee once the thing is up and running and ready to move on to something new that you can think about possibilities for. But I'm curious, how is this different or similar to the Kolbe index? Because that's something that I've used not only for myself, but when hiring people in like this for 20 years. And it seems like the basic ideas, it's about how you like to approach tasks or problems or your thinking process. It seems like it's very similar.
I had the Kolbe done several years ago, and I did operate on it. And so, but it's been so long, I actually would have to go back and refresh myself. But I do know that I worked, the colleague that I opened the agency with years ago was a super strong implementer. And so we dovetail very well on that. And I remember that Kolbe action taker, she was very much in that area. So I know that there's some overlap there.
Yeah, I actually pulled my mind back up because I haven't taken it for 15 years either, but I pulled it up while you were going through the presentation, and the ideas and the strength areas that you identify are very similar. And
interesting.
As you stated, having the information, it's helpful not only for yourself to know how you go about thinking or problem solving or whatever, or how you work or tackle tasks, but it's really, really huge when you're thinking about how to build a team, whether it's in a social profit venture or your business, or even understanding how you relate to people personally in relationships.
That's true. That's very true.
Yeah, it's nice when you know that you need to do something and, oh, I'm not a great implementer, but I know this person is, so we could join forces here and actually get something done.
Yes. Yes. Tell me how we're doing for time, Leslie.
We're at 12:20, so I would say you've got maybe 10 minutes or so.
Okay. Let me ask you all this. I'm going to start with Deb. Which one of these three would you consider that you might have trouble working with? Can you say that?
Yeah, I like I said, I think it's the ideators because it seems like you can never corral them into a direction. So for me, that doesn't work. I would, the process part, the development part, I do that and I do it because I know it's important and it doesn't energize me or sap me. But the idea aiding is like, yeah, that gets old after a while.
Yes, ideators can really keep on going. So ideators, Leslie, is there any one of these groups that you might find irritating to work with?
Yeah, the implementers sometimes. I actually am looking for and interviewing young creative college student types because I need a media and tech assistant. I've got 32 videos in my private Facebook group on emotional mastery, and I'm transferring them over to YouTube. And I need somebody to do the text and the copying and the uploading, and I can do it, and I just don't want to. And I'm trying to delegate. So the issue I've had is I have a very clear system and a clear order for how things need to be done correctly so that I can handle it. And the implementers just want to jump in and they have a better way and they have this and it's chaotic. So I have to find an implementer who's willing to follow the process.
They can be chaos producing. Yes, they can. Yeah. It can feel like chaos. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But in their eyes, it's just, I mean, I do give implementers a lot of credit because they are undaunted by setbacks. Okay, now they've got one thing to do. Now they've got one, now we're going to fix that. Now we're going to fix that. And I appreciate that courage to keep on going. So I wanted to talk to an implementer. Mona, you're a resident implementer here. What group would you find possibly irritating to work with or frustrating?
So I have a student that I've been mentoring for many years, and I'm in my program Actionomics, and he is such a clarifier, and it is taking him so long. He wants to know absolutely everything, and I want him to be out and learn on the court. I want him to take some action so he can begin to learn that way. So that's a struggle. I tell him I can keep going and clarifying the information for him, but it's impeding, I think, his development because he's not taking action.
Yes. Okay. So the bottom line is, if we all have our preferences and we don't necessarily all get along. And when you understand that someone's an ideator and why they keep spinning more ideas, or why they're ready to jump into action and not really fully understand the situation in your eyes, why they really need a little more time to make that idea perfect. We do have some abilities to be a little more compassionate in that area. We didn't clear, so all of our marks are going to continue, but I wanted to talk briefly before we wind up that what is helpful, and this is answering the question about implementation, perhaps, is that you're now communicating across preferences. And so what would happen if you knew that you've got to present yourself. You're going to present yourself to a potential new client. What would happen if you knew they were a clarifier? How are you going to present yourself? You might, and how would that change if that person were an implementer? So if you're presenting yourself to your clarifier, let's say it's Albert Einstein, man, you're going to want charts. You're going to want graphs. You're going to want tables. You're going to want to do something that shows you did some research, and you've got a organized presentation. Okay. You've got to do something that you put some thought into this. But if you go to the implementer, how are you going to present yourself? You are action oriented. This is what I did. This is how I did it. This is what we achieved. And these are the awards we won. Okay. So they want to see results. What if you are presenting your ideas to an ideator? How are you going to talk about this? Language is the key here. And Mona, this was the answer to your question about how are you talking to implementers? And as an implementer, you would have the natural language there. If you're talking to an ideator, what's the picture for this client? You might show them an example. Here was our vision, and here's what we did to get there. Here's our vision. Here was our vision for this project. You're going through your history about why they should hire you. This was our picture. This was our idea, and we won an award for it. You're emphasizing those ideas. And if you're presenting to a developer, what project did you do that you marched out that you could talk about, and you want a summary at the end? Organized, well thought out. Your clarifiers and your developers, they need more time. They want to see that you take time. Your ideators and your implementers, they want you to get right down to it. They're a bit speedier. Your implementer might tell you right then and there that you got the job. Your ideator too, your clarifiers and developers, they're not going to tell you for a bit. So this was, I'm going to wind this up because I know we need to stop, but once again, give clarifiers a clear explanation of the facts. For ideators, emphasize the big picture. For developers, show how something that you've developed from start to finish. And implementers, be complete, get to the goal, show achievement, highlight the action steps. We're going to move on. And what's a takeaway from today? You want to shout it out if anybody has one?
I remember when you did this when we all first did this at the creativity conference, there was a very small group in one of the categories, and Phyllis was one of them.
She's an ideator.
She was an ideator?
I'm pretty sure.
Oh, okay.
You don't think so? Okay.
I may have that wrong. Okay.
Okay.
Well, at any rate, it was very nice to be reminded and in a way confirmed that I'm comfortable with 3 of the 4 categories, but I'm most comfortable, and obviously, as an ideator.
Okay. Well, if she wasn't in your group, she might have been another group. She might have more than one preference, like that. Okay.
Whatever it was the smallest group, I think.
Okay. Those were the developers. Kitty was in that group. Anyway, anybody else?
Yeah, I would say that your statement that language is the key.
Yes.
I was a teacher in my previous life, and the goal was always to figure out how to help people understand, knowing how to talk to people. The same is true in sales. How
exactly right.
You can say what you need to say to get your message through to the person, and it's always the audience that you're thinking about, not you as the speaker.
Yes, well, that's exactly right. And the fact is, not only when we understand thinking preferences, it's not only that we creatively think differently, we listen differently. And as an implementer, there are very specific approaches and words that I'm going to respond to, just like a clarifier will. So absolutely right. So how can you learn more? You start with your FourSight profile. I have given you information that I hope you have walked away today from having an idea of what your strongest preference is, because that's where your greatest energy lies. But there are tips. If you want to get your formal assessment, go to FromGoodToGreat.net. This is a landing page. It's fresh off the press. If you have any trouble with it at all, just email me limecommunications2@gmail.com. I did put links to get a profile. There is a courtesy discount for this group or any members of this group that if you wish to do that. You can also get the profile with FourSight Company. That link is there too. I put a few additional resources for you, and I also put notes from today's presentation. That's just a quick wrap up from there. So again, from good2great.net, and take a photo of this slide if you wish. And or obviously email me.
Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. Creativity is seeing what no one else can see and thinking what no one else has thought of. And there we go. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Fabulous.
Suzanne. That was wonderful. Yes.
Good.
That's for you.
It's a game changer. When you know where your strongest energies lie, it's a game changer. And when you meet those people that want to jump right into action or need a little bit more time to tell you what the problem is, you know why. And it's not personality. It's because this is how we're wired.
Uh-huh. Very interesting. I remember the reaction from the group at the Creativity Conference was also very positive. People really like this. And it's simple enough that it's not going to make you crazy to learn it, but useful enough that it might be really helpful.
It's very, yes, right. So, and it's very straightforward. It is very straightforward. Absolutely. And 3 months after that presentation, I was getting certified. I really got the bug.
Well, I want to thank you very, very much. You want to unshare your screen?
Sure. Yes, of course. There we are.
There we are. Okay, so any other comments, questions, anything, anyone? Christine? No? Oh, sorry. Okay. Well, thank you all for joining us. Suzanne, that was wonderful. Thank you so much for your time and energy. Really interesting. And as we mentioned at the beginning, we'll be sending out an email shortly reminding you that our July meeting is yoga on the beach. And our planning meeting, members only, is in August, and hopefully we'll be starting up another round in the fall. All right, hope to see you all soon. Thank you so much.
you.
Thank you
Thanks
again,
for having me.
Suzanne.